War is hell, or so some people would say. Indeed, before the advent of photography, cinema, and ways to record events, war was seen as a glorious thing. For some, it is even a desired outcome, with some believing that dying in battle is a great honor worthy of praise and celebration. Of course, there were some who doubted, but since there was no way to prove anything back in the olden days, just about everyone was eager to engage in one kind of conflict or another. Of course, today we know better. A lot better. In fact, we all know just how terrible battles and war can be, that there are lots of diplomatic solutions that are explored first before open conflict is even considered. In this day and age, though, people indulge in hobbies that involve war, such as strategy games like StarCraft or Command and Conquer. Some of the grander and more notable war games are Warhammer 40,000, which I already discussed in a previous series of videos, and there is also Iron Kingdoms, that is divided into the robotic factions of War Machine and the monstrous realms of Hordes. Now though, I'd like to introduce you to an up-and-coming and possibly epic tabletop war game known as Trench Crusade. Hi, hello, and welcome again everybody to another episode of Natural Juan. This time around, as mentioned, we're going to discuss Trench Crusade, an all-new tabletop war game similar to Warhammer and Iron Kingdoms. Before all that though, I'd like to make a quick shout out to Mr. Jonathan Green, a long-time supporter of this channel and my videos. Also, if you like this video and would like to see more like it, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button and smack that bell for notifications. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's arm up, brothers and sisters, for the ultimate fight of our lives. Grab whatever weapon you can, be it sword, rifle, or just your bare fists. It's time to march to the Holy Land and drive the demons back to hell in Trench Crusade. Deus Vult, brothers and sisters in arms! Trench Crusade is a tabletop war game made in the same vein as Warhammer and Iron Kingdoms. It is considered a skirmish game in that you will rarely get more than 20 pieces or miniatures in the game proper. The game is played using exquisitely detailed miniature models of the soldiers, vehicles, and monsters found in the setting, and D6 or the common 6-sided dice. Trench Crusade is still mostly under heavy construction, which is headed by Tuomas Prinian, who developed Mordheim, which was one of the darker settings of Warhammer Fantasy, and that's saying something, and Mike Franchina, one of the lead or main artists and illustrators for the Diablo 4 video game, which sees a beloved franchise return to its darker roots. As can be surmised from knowing the background of the game's creators, Trench Crusade is a very dark game in tone, what with demons, monsters, and deranged cultists coming to dominate a third of the world. However, while still in its relative infancy, or one can compare it to still being a fetus since it is likely not even fully born yet, there has been enough material to work with to form theories and ideas about the game's overall setting and timeline. Of course, much like Warhammer 40,000, this may change as the game gets further developed. So far, only a small number of models, miniatures, or minis have been released for Trench Crusade. However, its players and various other enthusiasts have taken to kit bashing, or using minis or just the parts of other minis from other games and assembled new units from them. And from the few official pieces of the game that's been released, fans have begun their own speculations and stories of the game. To say that the fan base is preparing a very warm welcome for the actual release of the game would be a blatant understatement. The main setting of Trench Crusade, at least what's been released so far, takes place in the Holy Land, which has become a no man's land, meaning a place where no one survives due to enemy gunfire, poison gas, and other horrors of war. As you go deeper in and approach the very gates of hell, the heat becomes more and more unbearable to the point of simply cooking one's flesh off their bones. Only the most insane or most pious even dare approach the heart of Jerusalem, as the infernal temperatures can be felt even while miles away from the accursed area. According to the game's story or lore, this all started with the First Crusade and has persisted to the year of 1914. This means that in the game proper, the Crusades, which have raged on for almost 800 years, and if the terrible situation in the Holy Land persists, which it likely will, it will probably go on for hundreds of years to come. Included in the game are various factions from Christian or Catholic crusaders, Islamic warriors who use alchemy, and bad guys in just about every supernatural war game out there. Of course, this is not without good reason. The story of the game is as follows. The Knights Templar, or at least one of their number, become disgruntled and went to the Holy Land to commit the ultimate heresy. It is unknown what this ultimate heresy even is, although there's a lot of speculation as to what it could be. That said, the result can be seen clearly for what it is. A gateway to hell has opened in the heart of Jerusalem, and demons have overrun the Levant. To make matters worse, the forces of hell have also managed to infiltrate numerous societies around the globe, corrupting populations to serve their will and make the world a worse place for all that live. It is said, based on the lore of the game, that a full third of mankind's population have fallen in with demonkind and work to undermine the forces of good. Now, let's dive into each faction, shall we? We can start with the Principality of New Antioch, which stands somewhere in the Holy Land. It is the Catholic Church's official military presence in the area and is the bulwark of faith that keeps the forces of evil at bay. Or so they would like to think anyway. In any case, New Antioch can be seen as an organized response of Christendom to hold off the onslaught of demonic monsters issuing from the gates of hell, and somehow preventing them from spreading more evil and misery across the world. Those in the ranks of New Antioch include the Paladins, warriors who have consumed the cloned flesh and blood of the Messiah, have grown to superhuman proportions, and take the fight directly to their enemies. Supporting them are the various priests and nuns trained by the Vatican to fight back against the forces of evil. These include the sniper priests who take down the enemies of both man and God from afar using their powerful rifles, and the combat medics who succor to the wounded while using their lethal blades to finish off those who follow the evil one. Another major faction would be the Iron Sultanate, which, based on the name, can be surmised as the Islamic faction of the game. They are led by their brave sultan who, in more desperate situations, is willing to lead them in battle against the forces of hell. They consider the Christian factions of the game, the Principality of New Antioch and the Trench Pilgrims, as allies, but they are wary of them and only aid them out of convenience, since it was a splinter Christian or Catholic faction that unleashed so much horror and destruction upon the world. In combat, the Iron Sultanate uses everything from the Janissaries or Yanissaries, which serves as super soldiers, similar in nature to the Space Marines or Adeptus Astartes of Warhammer 40,000. The brave Azebs, who are mundane warriors who fight evil using just their faith, wits, and Jezzail rifles. And the alchemists, who use ancient science from the House of Wisdom to create hideous creatures akin to Pokemon, called the Lions of Jabir. Another good, or at least semi-good faction of the game are the Trench Pilgrims, who are another group of Christians, although they're less organized and more fanatical than the Principality of New Antioch, while they were never sanctioned by the church. Their weapons are nonetheless blessed by the clergy and are given their own place in the war, possibly due to being great cannon fodder against the legions of hell. However, their faith and fanaticism are often so great that distinguishing them from the enemy can almost be difficult at times. In the war proper, the Trench Pilgrims field mighty shrine anchorites that are similar to mecha or Gundams, but torture their own pilots within them with hooks and spikes, as well as countless soldiers who volunteer for the chance of glory, wealth, or simply to atone for past sins. Much like the Principality of New Antioch, the trench pilgrims also make use of communicants, men and women who have consumed the flesh and blood of a metachrist, or some sort of clone of Jesus that allows them to grow to large and powerful proportions and wield truly devastating weapons in the field. Then of course, there's your bad guy faction in the form of the heretic legions, men and women who have pledged themselves to the cause of hell. Much like the trench pilgrims mentioned above, they are also one of the numerous factions in the game proper, fielding countless troops from all over the globe. Among them are your basic heretics, who serve the forces of evil to spite what they believe to be the god tyrant that betrayed them, and number possibly in the billions. There are also your heretical choristers, men and women who hate God so much that they take their own lives by cutting off their own heads and, in a mockery of the resurrection of Christ, reanimate as grotesque and mutilated monsters that sing the hymns of hell, that drive the faithful to madness and death. Last, but most certainly not least, are the Death Commandos, elite assassins trained from the very pits of hell to fight in the Trench Crusade and take out key military assets and officers with knives, guns, and poisoned supernatural claws. Another bad guy faction would be the Black Grail, which, if you ask me, is probably worse than the heretic legions, all things considered. They are a mockery of the Holy Grail, the cup from which Jesus drank from, as the Black Grail is a kind of virus or pathogen that spreads like wildfire in the trenches and beyond. Created by the demon Beelzebub, the Black Grail is a disease that consumes the flesh of everything it touches, but leaves the mind horrifically intact, so that the victims are fully aware of what exactly is happening to their bodies. In the end, the infected either become puddles of infected sludge in the trenches or reanimate into terrifying monsters that spread their vile contagion even further. Some examples of these horrors include the fast-moving dogs that become saturated with a deadly plague, and the very unfortunate few who become these enormous and bloated horrors that resemble insects and shoot disease-causing bullets at their enemies. Most terrible of all are their plague knights, gigantic men and women who have been empowered by Beelzebub into becoming the evil counterparts of the paladins of New Antioch. In mockery of the faithful, the warriors and creatures of the Black Grail bring back gruesome trophies of their enemies to the shrine of Beelzebub to honor their master. In this game, it is a time of war and conflict, not unlike that of Warhammer 40,000, and even the forces of good and evil aren't clear, for while the heretic legions and the Black Grail are clear enemies of humanity, the trench pilgrims are equally blind in their fanaticism and ruthlessness. For the war in the trenches are no longer just about physical danger and destruction, but a struggle for the very soul of mankind.